It's the early 1900s and you have just immigrated with your young family to the small working-class town of Rankin, Pennsylvania, all on the promise of a steady paycheck. On your first day of work, you head down the hill and see it for the first time. 400 acres of metal giants. At the very core of the complex is a blazing red, fire-throwing metal beast who, under life-threatening conditions, you will be tasked with taming around every hour of the clock. In the decades to come, she will cool and quiet into the rusty skeleton she is today. Trespassers and visitors will stand where you stood working, and while they may never know your name, they will know that you were one of the Rust Belt magicians capable of turning rocks into metal, barely credited for transforming a nation. This is Carrie Furnace. Built in 1881, Carrie Blast Furnace hugged one side of the Monongahela River while her sister site sat on the other. Carrie was strictly responsible for producing iron ore. At her height, more than 1,200 tons a day, all of which was then transported back across the river to be turned into steel. Her fate was not different than any other steel mills who lost the fight to far cheaper foreign production. In 1978, she closed and became a haven for trespassers and urban explorers. Today, because of the Rivers of Steel nonprofit, you can legally explore the site and learn the process from a legit steel worker who I shall refer to from here on out as Sexy Steel, based on two leading qualifications. One, he has retained the now increasingly hard to find traits of manliness. Work boots, jeans, collared shirt, hat, truck, no hair product. Has a manly job, playing with lava. Two, has a key to this industrial paradise, perhaps the most alluring feature of all. Sorry girls, there's a ring on all the Sexy Steels I was with that day. I checked 3 times, just in case the first 2 were sun glares. Anyway,
we call it taconite.
Sexy Steel will explain the outrageously complicated process of turning stone into steel. Honestly, I don't know how such an elaborate process was invented, but I can tell you it took hundreds of years to figure out. It's a delicate and dangerous balance of mixing iron ore, coke, and limestone at a cozy 2,000 degrees for 24 hours a day. Sexy Steel will tell you all the details. After all, that was his career, and he came from a line of generational steel men. There's something about the Rust Belt that I just don't see in many industries today. An unbending sense of pride. Maybe some of that is the time period. From the early to mid 1900s, that was a very different kind of worker. These men were proud of their steel. There was nothing easy or pretty about working in a blast furnace. The pay was meager and the job site precarious. Moving liquid metal, you had at most a set of goggles, a thermal jacket, and a pair of wooden shoes to keep your own soles from melting. Injury was common and for steel workers disastrous. There was no trotting down to HR in need of a few worker comp days. Are you kidding? If you were too hurt to work, you didn't, and your family didn't eat. But that's not the story a steel worker will start with. Their sense of pride is palpable when you ask about their work, because they know, as their children know, and the children for generations to come know, when they see the Golden Gate Bridge or stand at the front door of the Empire State Building, the back-breaking blood, sweat, and fatigue of their fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers made the framework of America. Given the gravity of that, I have, at least a couple thousand questions, but one curiosity rose above them all. Why name the facility such a cute lady name? He said that most of the engineers and tycoons would name the furnaces after the woman in their life because the furnaces were hot and temperamental. Somehow I think that Carrie was not a Mrs. Tycoon. She was the steel side thing. I'd like to think they'd have named the red fire-breathing dragon part of this operation after me. This is one of the few remaining furnaces in the country, standing at about 100 feet high. It took 5 million gallons of water every single day to cool and control the process, and in an era with very little regulation, if any, they just dumped that right back into the river, creating something of a localized jacuzzi. All steel mills are built on rivers for this reason. The fishing spots there were also terrible for this reason. Fast forward to 2019, and the outside of the Metal Jungle Gym, it's a graffiti artist's paradise. One of the big challenges in preserving structures like this that are industrial is like, how do you keep people from coming in and just graffitiing the whole thing and ruining the original look? Well, they solve that here by dedicating this wall that surrounds the perimeter to the graffiti community. So once a year, they let them in, clean the wall off, and let them put their art up. And then that way, the main structure isn't tagged. And so it's sort of this like honor agreement. The inside is a photographer's paradise. But use the time between adjusting your focus to consider what it must have been like in here. The furnaces ran non-stop, and in these troughs oozed glowing molten metal controlled only by the men. No computers, no automatic shutoff. The temperature never relented. It was hot enough that the guys could put a raw steak in their lunch pail, throw it on a pipe, and have themselves a hot meal. If the transformation of ore isn't interesting to you, what these men did to transform a nation ought to be. We often teach U.S. history as though it was all forged on the battlefield in wars won and lost. And unfortunately, give the Rust Belt all too short of a chapter for everything forged here out of fire.